Concerns over healthcare continue in Korea as government authorities and medical practitioners fail to bridge the gap over differences regarding reforms for the medical sector. So what is the government's latest stance? What has been the response from doctors? And beyond borders, is North Korea running through a to-do list for its weapons ambitions? Welcome to Wednesday's edition of Issues and Insiders. I'm Min Sunhee. It's that time of the week yet again, during which our foreign correspondents touch upon a number of headlines here in this part of the world and beyond. Today I have Nicolas Rocca here in the studio. Nicolas, it's good to have you back.
Good to be here, Sunny.
I also have Malene Jensen with us. Malene, welcome back.
Thank you.
Nicolas, we'll start with you then. Let's begin with the latest developments regarding the standoff between government authorities and the medical practitioners here in the country. What are the latest remarks from the government here?
Well, we've been hearing in the last few days what we've been hearing in the last few weeks. On one hand, the government is pointing out the need to have a more flexible approach towards doctors. It's what Yoon Suk-yeol said during the weekend, and what's been pointed out recently, that there's a need for the government to discuss with doctors, to be lenient with the trainees or the more senior doctors that are willing to go back to work. But on the other hand, there's a hard line that is basically saying we will implement this reform. We heard from Interior Ministry Lee Sang-min saying today that the reform will go forward, that by May we'll see 2,000 supplementary university students in medical school. So it's been kind of the same speech from the government. We will go forward with this reform, and if you are going back to work, we will find ways to ease the suspension or ease the burden on the doctors that make that choice. But there's a larger question for the government in that long standoff now, is how do we really address the issues at stake, because it's been more than a month now. And the doctors don't seem to be willing to go backward. And how do we, so we're going to add 2,000 new doctors in medical schools, so that will solve part of the issue. We know that now in Korea, if we take out Seoul, there's a real lack of doctors, especially in rural areas. The rate of doctors, I think, for Korea outside of Seoul is 1.96 for 1,000 inhabitants. It's way lower than the OECD figures of 3.30 something. So there's this real need. Yes, adding more doctors will solve it, but then the other part of the issue is that we lack doctors in Korea in the most important fields, which is pediatrics, high-risk surgeries, and obstetrics, emergency medicine, all those sectors. So on this part, and on the fact that we need more doctors in rural area, there's a need to talk with the doctors because the issues won't solve itself. How do we do it? Do we incentivize doctors to go into rural areas? Do we force doctors to stick to their specialty? So there's still a lot of questions, and I think the government has now, time is running. The elections are coming up on the 10th of April. The doctors don't seem to be willing to go back to work without abandoning this reform. So I think there's probably a need for a new approach from the government, because the situation is worrying at the hospital, and time is running out.
Right, and all that being said, Malene, what has been the response from the medical sector itself?
Well, same as it has been the last month. The doctors are not willing to move before that this reform is pulled back, before they get better work conditions. Actually, just this week, they appointed a new leader to lead the strike. I believe his name is Lim Hyun-taek. And he is already the head of the Korean Pediatric Association. And he is definitely known to be a hardliner, in the sense that he has already said that they will not step back. They want this reform to be pulled back. And actually, Mr. Lim has also been saying that he will not resume the talks with the Korean government until the vice health minister has been fired. So this is definitely still a problem that is huge in Korea, and it seems like there is no resolution to it right now. We still have more than 90% of trainee doctors who have walked out, along with a few medical professors at universities and at hospitals. Senior doctors have also been walking out, so there is definitely still this very stern standoff between the doctors and the government. And well, there seems to be no resolution else for now.
Right, unfortunately that is. Moving forward, Nicolas, Seoul's foreign ministry has extended its condolences to Russia over a very shocking shooting incident there involving an IS-affiliated terrorists at a concert hall in last Friday, I believe. Now, I understand France, for its part, has raised its terror alert warning in light of this appalling assault. What more can you tell us, especially keeping in mind, of course, that Paris will be hosting the Olympics this summer? So
yeah, the terrorist threat has been looming around France for some time now, and I think a lot of us in France expected, the terror warning to be raised in light of the upcoming Olympics. But for sure, this terrorist attack in Moscow kind of, made it happen maybe earlier than expected. When it comes to this group, this particular group, Islamic State in Khorasan, it's a region between Afghanistan and Iran. We've seen people from Afghanistan, Tajikistan operating in that specific attack in Moscow. They've been already operating in France and elsewhere in Europe. There's been arrest in France, I think, in 2022 from members affiliated of this group. So the threat is already here for Western Europe and for France when it comes to that group. So what is going to happen for the Olympics? We already know that 4,000 more military personnel are going to be patrolling around France, specifically around religious buildings, mosques, synagogues, churches, high school that have been target of a lot of bomb threats recently in France, but also, I mean, anybody that came to France could see that in train station you have military personnel heavily armed. You have the same in airports. So I think, yeah, the level of day-to-day surveillance is going to be raised. But the other part that is harder to see is actually the change of attitude from the French intelligence service since the Nice attack in 2016. The idea is not to chase terrorists once they did their deed, once the attack has been done, but the idea is to prevent any terrorist attack. And there's been change in the process, and that will be a key for the Olympics because we know it's a very important event. There will be millions of people in France at that time, and of course it's a target for a lot of terrorist organization. So yeah, as I mentioned, we've been having threats against schools. There's been one terrorist attack in France that has been avoided every month and a half. So the figures are really high already. But what kind of threats are we looking coming into the Olympic? There's the risk of a terrorist group, as we mentioned, Islamic State and Khorasan. Those are usually bigger operation. There's more personnel. It's more organized group, but it's also in a way easier to detect for the intelligence services because the more people, the more messages are being exchanged. So the surveillance on the internet is probably easier to do. But what we've seen recently in the last terrorist attack in Paris and in France have been more one-man operation, just one person, just taking a knife and going into the street, and that's incredibly hard to detect. So that's kind of the challenge that we are facing coming into the Olympics. There's a diversity of threats. There's younger and younger profiles of terrorists. So yeah, there's a wide spectrum of threat, and there's going to be a lot of work to do for the intelligence service in France to assure that the Olympics go smoothly.
Right, of course. Also, Malene is staying beyond Korea's borders. Neighboring Japan's decision to end its negative rate policy made headlines here in Korea last week. Now, I believe Denmark, your country, was the first nation in the world to implement a negative rate policy some 12 years ago. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes, of course. So the negative rate policy was introduced in 2012, which was in the middle of the financial crisis, both hitting the global world, but also hitting Denmark. And the purpose for making this negative rate policy was actually to have Danes spending money. Because the problem is that when there is a financial crisis, people tend to hold on to their money. But by enforcing the negative rate policy, the Central Bank of Denmark actually made all the other banks pay money to have people putting money into the bank. And that meant that the Danish banks, the local banks, they could not give their clients money for having money in the bank, which initiated a lot of people to do other kind of investments, like invest in stocks, or to just spend their money. Another positive thing about the negative rate policy was that it became very cheap to loan money from the bank, Because there was no positive rates, you could lend money really, really cheaply with a very low rent. And that motivated a lot of Danes to loan a lot of money and to buy houses to kickstart the economy. And it actually worked. And it was seen as being quite positive in Denmark for the first 7 years. However, 3 years ago, the negative rate policy was hitting the banks so hard that they decided that they would also make their clients pay money to put money in the bank, meaning that especially Denmark's wealthiest was hit very hard by having a certain percentage of their income in the bank taken away every year or every month. And that created a really heated public debate where people were discussing, is it worth it to loan money cheaply if we also have to pay money to keep our money safe in the bank? A lot of people were discussing other kinds of investment forms, even such as purchasing gold bars and keep them hidden somewhere, or just purchase a lot of stocks at other companies. And it started actually creating some distrust towards the banks and a lot of bad resentment, bad feelings towards banks. So now that the negative rate policy has been ended in Denmark, along with Japan and along with the rest of the world, it has actually created a new debate in Denmark, because now people have been complaining that now it costs so much money to take a loan, to buy new houses. We have a housing crisis. So now, even though you actually get money back, like you get money for having money in the bank, then it affects the ability to loan money easily, which is also a problem now in Denmark. So it has really gotten some positive and some negative feedback.
Right, I see. And moving from economic interests to those of security, Nicolas, a US official recently raised quite a bit of alarm by claiming that North Korea's Kim Jong-un is actually running through a to-do list with regard to his nuclear as well as missile weapons ambitions. What more can you add, and how valid are these concerns?
Well, if we look at the last few years, definitely we've seen such a wide range of North Korean missiles that have been showcased in state media, because in the end, that's most of the information we get. What have we seen? A lot of ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles, in 2021, 2020, 2022. More recently, submarine launched missiles, cruise missiles, tank units just a few days ago, short-range ballistic missiles, intermediate-range ballistic missiles, the so-called unmanned drone that is supposed to create, a nuclear tsunami. We have hideouts on the capacities of that drone. Hypersonic missile system also recently. So, I mean, what we know is that North Korea has been trying to push forward the idea that, look, we have a huge diversity of arsenal. We have the means to hit you in a lot of different ways, and you are not safe even though your defense system are, of high quality. We have the means to outpass them. That is kind of the message that have been sent. We can see also that recently we know that North Korea has pointed out that South Korea is the main enemy, and most of the hostile message have been targeted to Seoul and a bit less towards the United States, when the United States was always framed as the main enemy. We had a lot of ICBM tests, because they were allegedly supposed to be able to hit the United States territory. Recently, what we've seen is more, a wide range of cruise missiles, short-range missiles, intermediate-range ballistic missiles that are able to hit South Korea, but also U.S. bases in Japan, maybe Guam. It's been more that area that's been the main target. So all of that, it's worrying development, but it's in the continuity of what we've seen those last few years. What is even more worrying is that recently we know the quality of the North Korean arsenal has increased, but also now what they have and what they didn't have a few months ago is real life data on the quality of their weapons, because we know that there's a certain number of ammunitions, ballistic missiles, probably the Hwasong-11, KN-23, KN-24 have been found in Ukraine, so they're being used by the Russian army against Ukraine. And what that gives Pyongyang, it's now they know how well they perform in a real-life situation, which is unprecedented for North Korea. Before, they didn't have this data, so it's going to allow them also to, kind of know what they need to produce. Yes, for the needs of Russia, but also for their own needs, how their shells perform, how any kind of ammunition they send or Russia's way perform, and that's I think a major change that we need to be looking into, and we need to be cautious to kind of being able to assess what is the concrete level of threat that the DPRK poses to Seoul and its United States ally.
Right, and against those concerns, there were hopes for some kind of engagement with North Korea earlier this week when Kim Yo-jong claimed that Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida had relayed hopes to meet with Kim Jong-un in the near future. Now, back on Tuesday, I believe, she dashed those hopes by saying North Korea was not interested in speaking with Japan. All that being said, Malene, what are your prospects with regard to a summit between Japan and North Korea?
I don't believe such a summit will come anytime soon, to be honest, mainly because it's very typical in North Korea to, throw out a line and then pull it back and have this kind of small game with other foreign countries. So I do believe that this was just some kind of play that that North Korea was like throwing towards Japan to see how would they react potentially. And obviously Japan is very interested in having talks with North Korea, especially because North Korea has abducted a bunch of Japanese citizens back in the 70s, 80s, that Japan is very interested in retrieving back. And there has previously been some summits between Japanese leaders and North Korean leaders where it has actually been possible to get some of these people back into Japan. However, it seems like it will not happen in near future, particularly because North Korea initially said that if these talks were even to be held, there is no way that they would be talking about the abductees, because they already see it as a problem that has been solved, even though the citizens are obviously still in North Korea or dead, or we don't know what happened to them. Japan, on the other hand, is very interested in having this summit just to have the potential of getting the people back, but also because Fumio Kishida at the moment is one of the least popular democratic leaders in the world. He's less popular than Yoon Suk-yeol, less popular than Macron in France. He's less popular than most state leaders. So I think if he could actually manage to meet with Kim Jong-un, it would definitely boost his popularity. However, it doesn't seem that the summit will come to be. We can only hope for Japan that North Korea might in the future, maybe in a few months, maybe in a few years, again be willing to cooperate with Japan in order to maybe gain some kind of diplomatic relationship. However, it seems like just as we saw that there was something to happen, the hopes have already been crushed, even though, as from my perspective, it seems like Japan did everything they could to make these talks happen. Japan has not, at least openly, said that they would be interested in getting the people back. They have not made any of these kind of remarks. They have said that they would be able to speak with North Korea on any kind of condition. But yeah, I don't think it will happen.
Right. Meanwhile, Nicolas, I believe we have time for one more question. Perhaps we can end on a light note today, keeping in mind all the somber news we've been covering thus far. Korean thriller Ex-Humor, it hit 10 million ticket sales this past weekend. Have you seen it, by the way?
No, unfortunately not yet.
But I'm sure you've heard quite a bit about it. What are your thoughts regarding this milestone of 10 million ticket sales?
Well, its success is not really a surprise if you look at the reviews, if you look at the success it had in the Berlin Film Festival. We've seen, as you mentioned, 10 million ticket sale. It has great success in Indonesia, in Taiwan, in Vietnam. It will soon be released in the US, in the UK, in Canada. So we're looking into more success for another successful Korean movie. First of all, I would say the plot is quite intriguing. A renowned shaman is hired by a very wealthy family in America, a Korean family living in America that want to investigate kind of an illness that hits the firstborn son of every generation. I mean, it mixes a lot of different, aspects of the Korean culture. It's set in Gangwon-do, a beautiful region, and the casting is great. Also, I mean, we have, of course, Trim Yun-sik that has been seen in Oldboy in a lot of various movies, and also the actress Kim Keon-eun that is doing, apparently I've heard by you also a really impressive job as acting as a shaman in the movie. So I think it has everything to make an amazing thriller, a really thriller / horror movie. And I've actually found a few screening with English subtitles in Seoul, so I will be going as soon as I can. And I've heard also from you, Sunhee, that it's a movie worth my time, so I'll definitely go watch it.
Definitely worth your time. All right, Nicolas, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts today. And Malene, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Right, well, that ends this edition of Issues and Insiders. Thank you for watching.